were fortunate enough tonight to have two bright lights. Ryan, take us into the next one. This is going to be a very interesting bright lights. We're traveling tonight. We're going to France.
Yes.
I'm going to turn it over right away. Just a reminder, if you're going to speak tonight, make sure you push the button that'll turn on the microphone and pass it around. But really, this group has spent some time getting out of Wisconsin around spring break, and Wisconsin was not the place to be this winter or
No
spring
kidding.
break. So they're lucky on a lot of different accounts, but coming back from France, we have some great stories to tell. So if you could take us away and do some introductions, that'd be great.
So, this one on, yes. Okay. Bonsoir. I brought 3 of the students here tonight, and they're going to do most of the talking about our.
Can you introduce yourself?
Oh, I'm sorry. My name is Debbie Bowilgus, and I'm the French teacher over at West High School. In August, I came in front of the CNI committee to get approval for our trip to France. The difference of this trip compared to other trips that we've taken in the past are the students actually lived with French families, and then after 6 days with the French families, then we met back up together and we traveled to Paris and spent 3 days in Paris. It was a very successful trip. The students did a lot of work ahead of time, meaning connecting with their families and knowing the students and the moms and dads and brothers and sisters with whom they stayed with. And I brought them here to tell you a little bit about it. We'll have some pictures in the background that we just put together. So I'll let them tell you a little bit about their experience or what they enjoyed the most about their trip.
Great. Take it away.
You have to introduce
Take us on a trip.
Sure. Hi, I'm Nikki Kajawa. Sorry, I'm a senior over at Waukesha West, and I was a part of this trip of 9 students that were able to go to France.
Who did you say?
My host family, there was the oldest daughter, her name was Mathilde. She was 16 years old, and she also had a younger sister named Clarice, and she was, I believe, 13. They stayed with their mom over in Chartres, and then their father lived a little bit out of the way, so we stayed with her mom. I attended school with her for 4 days, which was an experience. The classes were very long. The teachers spoke very fast. And I did my best to understand as much as I could. So do you guys have anything to say about school?
Yeah. Okay, my name is Juliana Dodd, and I'm a junior this year, and I also go to West with Madame and Nikki, and I went to France over spring break also, and it was really cool. I stayed with a girl named Marion and her mother and her brother Guillermo, who was a couple years younger than Marion and I. I also went to school for 4 days, which was very interesting because definitely like any student here, going with different students, you're going to have a different experience. So it was just really cool because we all came back and we were all talking about all our different experiences and our different stories. And so there's just like a ton of stuff we could talk about, but it was really cool. And then we also toured in Paris for 3 days, which I really enjoyed because we went to the Louvre, and I am an art history student, and it was just really cool for me to see a lot of the paintings that I just talked about the week before we left in class, and that was actually probably my favorite part of being in Paris. So that was really neat.
Hello, my name is Kelly Schwantes. This year I am a sophomore, and I went to France. My host family, my host father was a history teacher, and my host mother was a German teacher. I found that very interesting. I had 2 teachers for host parents.
And where did you get to go? Where did your family take you?
On Sunday, the day after we got there, we went to the Chartres Cathedral. That was really awesome. I ran into Jack, who is not here today with us at the meeting, and I talked to him a little bit.
Go to Normandy, too.
I did get to go to Normandy. That was on Monday. The host father took me up to Normandy. I thought that was really cool. He is a history teacher, so it makes sense. and I went through the cemetery and I found a few
yes.
people from Wisconsin. I found a few guys. But in no way did I have the time to go through all 9,000 plus gravestones to find all of them.
The interesting thing is that all the students, even though we all landed in the same city, speaking of D-Day, but, and we all went off into our families, we didn't see each other, or some of the kids saw each other, some of them
Yeah.
didn't, because they all attended the same school, but once we all got back together, every student had a different experience. And so the train ride back from Chartres to Paris, they could not stop talking about, I got to do this, I got to do that. So Kelly was she is the only one that got to Normandy, which was, again, anything the family did for you, all the students were very grateful and very kind and gracious. But some of the kids got to go to Versailles. Some students Juliana got to go to another castle. And everybody had a different experience. The one thing that I noticed as their language improved in 6 days, I can't imagine if they were there longer. The confidence that they've gained. And right when we got back, we were watching a video off the news, and Juliana, I said, turn to your partners, what did you understand? And she starts talking, she goes, I can't believe I understood everything that he said. So it was like a light switch went off in their heads, and that was, of course, the most gratifying thing for me to see.
Oh, I was gonna quick talk about my host family a little bit more. I didn't finish up with that. My host parents actually had 4 children. Only 3 of them were present. The oldest son, his name is Rudolph. He is 24, and at the time he was in China. I am unsure what he was doing there. And there was a 21-year-old daughter. Her name was Daphne. She was there for a few days. The younger daughter, she was 16, and her name is Iphigenie. She was the one that took me to school. And the youngest son, his name is Lothair. He was 13, and he plays the violin, which is the same instrument my younger brother plays. I found that really interesting.
Yeah. So here's a couple just shots of us traveling, and maybe Juliana or Nikki or Kelly can mention.
Yeah. So the first thing that I remember having to look back to when we were traveling was all of the train vocabulary and all the plane vocabulary, which we learned in, was it French 3 or French 2? Very, very long time ago. So that was hard to remember, but it was really cool seeing how everything was very different, how everything was, and it's one of those things where, like, you know, all the stuff is going to be in a different language, but then when you get there, it's like, oh my God, it's in French. Oh my God. So that was something.
And then because of, we've gone through the French, but we get it. We get most of it. And me personally, I thought I wasn't going to get about 80% of it. Despite this being my 3rd year of French, but I got most of it. That was awesome.
So it was really cool because we got there, and on the last slide you saw the Bienvenue à Paris, and that's just welcome to Paris, really cool. We're all like, it's the sign we first see, take a picture. And then some of these pictures are at the airport, train station, and on the train, and it was just definitely really interesting. And the school was also interesting that these pictures up here now are from. And they actually did have lockers, which is rather uncommon in France, but they weren't like ours where they keep all their books in them. They just like go to them maybe like once a week, maybe just to keep their lunch there sometimes, or if they want to keep like a house key there. Yeah, and that was really cool. And they also had 2 buildings, and the schedules were very different in that they might have a class like in one room with a teacher one day, but then the next day it would be in a different room in like the other building, which was really strange for me.
And another thing that I thought was strange is their class periods, depending on which classroom their class took place in. The class would run for either an hour long to 2 hours long, with possibly a 15-minute break in between the 2-hour long class. Also, another thing which was very strange was how a lot of the students were all in different, how I describe them are like different like courses. There's three main.
They're like tracks.
Yeah, three main tracks. There's a science and math, a history, like social studies one, and then also like a language one.
Yeah.
My host sister was in the math and science, where she would have the majority of her hours spent at school would be geared towards her math and science. And they'd start school at 8 and then they'd end school at 5. So a very long day of school with very long hour classes.
But they do have a 1 hour long lunch, so they generally go home or go out for lunch. My host sister was actually in the language, so she was taking some 5 different languages. So I sat through some German and Russian, which was very strange because it's like they're teaching it in French, a different language that I don't understand, and it was just going so far over my head. But I had another girl in our group who was in all my classes with me, except for English. So that was really interesting.
And I'd also just like to add something real quick. With my host sister's schedule, she might have a couple of hour-and-a-half long classes, but then had this block where she wouldn't have anything. And then later in the day, she would go back to school, do another class, and it's really strange how their schedules are set up.
Yeah.
Did all of your host siblings speak English?
Yeah, generally everyone in France speaks English
Yeah.
pretty well. But I know a lot of times while I was there, I made the effort to speak French and not expect people to speak English to me at all.
Good.
And I got a lot of compliments on that, and I'm sure Nikki and Kelly heard the same thing. A lot of compliments on that where they're like, oh, your French is very good, because a lot of times they hear people, Americans, come and they only speak English, and a lot of French people really kind of spite that to some extent.
Oh, yeah.
That I really sensed, because you'd see other tourists.
And something else that's kind of interesting is sometimes the people, they'll hear you speak French and they'll understand you. But if they know English, they'll start speaking English because of your American accent.
They might say something in English, too.
Yeah, like in the math class one day, I was sitting next to my host sister, and I'm speaking French to her, but then the girl behind me starts speaking English.
Yeah, so with me and my host sister, what we tried to do is I would try to speak to her as well as I could in French, and then she would answer me in English, and that's how we communicated so that she could work on her English and I could work on my French all at the same time.
Yeah.
I know that I stayed with a family as well when I was over there, and we spoke French the whole time, but that was my goal, is to try to improve my French. And at one point they said, do you mind if we correct you? And I said, sure, just be gentle. So I did get a lot out of it too, that they came back and were very nice, and he was an English teacher, so I got to go to his English class and was the guest speaker there. So we all learned a lot, not just the students, but everybody. And I think all the families were very complimentary of the attitudes and the behavior of our students. And I think the majority got invited back, please come back and see us anytime. So I was really proud that our students managed their behavior and their attitudes, and because it's stressful, because they were by themselves. And it's not for the weak at heart, and they did a great job, so I was really proud of them.
So before you change, this picture.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead. This picture is the cathedral right in the city where we stayed. It's a really unique cathedral because it's built on higher land than the rest of the city. It also reflects both the Romanesque and the High Gothic styles, which is really interesting because it's just a very important cathedral for the historical time period of cathedral building, and it's gorgeous inside.
I want to compliment Julianne. At one point during the Louvre, our tour of the Louvre, she took the microphone from the tour guide. I want to compliment her history teacher and her art teacher, because that's where she sort of fell in love with this, but put all of them together and made a great connection. we were really happy. Mr. Grunsky helped us a lot prepare us because some of this is so overwhelming that we would come in before school and he would prepare, like, this is what you have to do, this is what you have to know about this cathedral. And it really was a collaborative effort from quite a few teachers, whether they knew it or not, and some that did it expressly just for our small group. And that was cool to see.
Debbie, a question that I have, back to the families. Maybe I should remember this from a year ago when you came to us about this. But how did you must have had to find roughly 10 families?
We went through a company that does it for you.
Oh.
So you pay the travel company, and then they make all the arrangements.
Okay,
And
so-
in the
so they were
meantime, we
screened-
do have kids coming from France over into the Waukesha area that will also host, that will be hosted by Waukesha families.
And that company screens them and?
Yes,
Yeah.
screens them as
Great.
well. And that was one of those, if any of these students would have hosted, or if any of the students that are going to be hosting now, they do get a discount if we do this program again, and I hope to continue with it, because again, it wasn't just traveling, it
It was
was,
more than a tour.
it was
yeah.
more than a tour, and
Thank
it
you.
was.
And that's
it
one
was
of the
really
things that we
interesting.
certainly look for.
Right, right.
Yeah.
What city were you in when you went?
We were in Chartres.
Oh, Chartres, okay.
Yeah, it's about
2 hours south.
2 hours south of Paris, yeah.
Okay.
An hour, so
And how long is the school day?
It actually varied on day. Wednesdays, they always get out at noon. That's just a French thing. Every Wednesday, they have a release at that time. But I know my host sister, she got out like at a different time every day because they had some classes that are like optional, and like she had a change in her schedule where she didn't have English at the end of her Monday anymore. So we got out at like 2 that day, and it just, I don't know, it changes. But generally, it's like
Eight to
8 to
4,
5.
or yeah, 8 to 5.
8 to 5.
8 to 5? Oh,
Yeah.
wouldn't you
So-
like to be in school at 5
No,
o'clock in the
but-
afternoon?
No.
Remember 1 hour long lunch and we only get like 25 minutes,
That's
which is
true.
something the
That's
French
true.
kids found astonishing.
And do
Yes.
they go to school during the summer or not?
Their year, I believe, is longer than ours.
It's
But
their school year's longer.
yeah,
I
it like
thought
it
so.
goes. They get off at the end of June, whereas we get off at the
But
beginning.
another thing to add to that is during their winter break, their spring break, they get 2 full weeks off,
Yeah.
whereas
Okay.
we usually get about a week or a week and a half.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
And did you find that the courses of study were similar to the courses of study in our high schools?
I actually have an interesting thing about this. When I was there in their history class, they were talking about the Vietnam War and everything surrounding that. And it was interesting because I had just studied that in my history class. So I was able to understand like a lot of what the teacher said. And so that was really interesting. And we found that their courses were very similar, but the biggest thing is they don't do collaboration like we do. It's all lectures.
Yes.
That was the biggest
Yes,
thing.
lectures,
that we noticed. And notes.
no games.
No games.
All the
No partner work.
teachers, they don't like write things on the board necessarily.
Most of mine did.
Like
but-
I like 2 of mine did.
Yeah.
It's all speaking and writing notes.
Yeah.
Writing notes, okay.
But they don't get as much homework as we do, as far as I could tell.
And didn't someone say that that the teacher would tell everyone's grades in front of the entire
Yes.
class?
Yeah.
That was interesting.
Not
They have this big exam called the bac, and they take that to graduate from high school in France. And my host sister's class had just taken what's called a bac blanc, and that's just like a practice test. And they were getting their grades during English, and the teacher was reading them in front of the whole class. And that was really interesting to me and the other American who was in that class with me, because we were like, that would never happen. Like, teachers would never let everyone know our grade. Like,
Name and all.
interesting, name and all. And then they would say, oh, this
No, thank you.
yeah, no. And then
No,
they would
thank
say, this person is the lowest grade of the class, and then they'd announce their grade and their name, and they would say the highest grade in the class was this, and then they'd announce the name.
But the kids don't care.
Yeah.
They're used to it. That's
Yeah.
just
Yeah, they're used to
that's
it.
just how it is.
And
their culture.
everyone knows who the people who are most likely to get like those grades are, because they have all their classes with the same group of kids, which was interesting because we got to know the kids in our classes.
Is high school 3 years or 4 years?
3.
It's 3, yeah.
It's 3, okay. And can anybody who I suppose, qualifies by grade point or whatever, go to college?
If they pass the back, it depends how they do on that test.
Okay,
And so if they do really well, then they can get into the best universities. And actually, a lot of times they take, I can't remember what it's called, it's like a junior school or something, where they'll go another 2 years.
Okay.
And our school actually had that, and you'd see them walking around.
Okay.
And they take another 2 years to prepare themselves for the really good colleges.
okay, good, interesting,
yeah.
interesting. Okay,
Can I?
yes, please.
I have a couple questions. First of all, Nikki, where are you going to go next year? And are you going to do French?
I'm planning on going to UW Stout next year, up north, over by the Twin Cities. I'm very excited for that. I do want to continue studying French, and I do want to study abroad more in college as well, because me personally, I love that experience. I love going out and just learning about other people's cultures, as well as being able to live it and just study from that as well. So that's something I would love to do in college.
I know Stout has junior semester and junior year abroad, so some great programs. Just a quick story, and then I'd like to hear more from all of 3 or 4 of you. It was a number of years ago, before I had children. I took a group to Paris, to France, and it was wonderful. I mean, we were there over a week. Actually, we stayed up near the Moulin Rouge, which is kind of a red light district, so that was really fun. Okay. But we got very good at the metro, and we were at the metro station really near downtown one day, true story, and, you know, the train was coming our way, but there was no train there. And we looked over across the tracks, and there was this group from Waukesha. We had no idea. Kit Donahue had taken a group.
Oh, for heaven's sake.
But anyway, so that was very exciting, but then the trains came, and so we said, hello, goodbye, and we didn't see him the rest of the time. But I wanted to ask you what else you did in Paris that really stuck with you, that you really liked.
Okay. You can.
What I really liked is I really liked walking down the streets and seeing all the old buildings, because everything in Paris is old. So it's like you're walking through history. And that's what I really liked. I really liked going to all the museums. We went to a total of 3 museums. We went to
Which ones?
The Louvre,
Yep.
Musée d'Orsay,
Which is the
yeah.
newer art
and
museum.
Anvely, which is a military museum
Yeah.
as
yeah.
well. So we went to a total of 3, which
Great.
was really cool.
Yeah.
Oh, great.
I don't know, we saw a lot of stuff. And I liked both of the art museums because, like I said, I'm just really into art. And that was really cool. And we saw the Arc de Triomphe, which was really cool.
Oh, yes, oh, yes.
Did you try to cross the street there? Or no?
Oh, no, you go under. There's a
I know,
tunnel.
you go under. I
Yeah,
know,
there's a
I know.
tunnel. It's you're not allowed
Yeah,
to.
I know.
I was
Yeah.
required to bring them all home.
So, and we actually went all the way up top in that, and that's really cool.
That was difficult.
And we took a lot of pictures. And
Wasn't it like
I know.
286 stairs or how many
yeah,
stairs were
lots
there?
of stairs.
That's right.
Yeah, one of the first days I did do a pedometer and we walked 24,000 steps. So
It was
a
yeah,
lot.
2,400.
And they were all
no,
spiral staircases, which are
24,000
scary.
steps. Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
oh my god,
It's like a
there were
single
several.
file line.
There were several times when I was scared that I was gonna fall.
Great.
Especially because at the cathedral at Chartres, I actually went up one of the towers. You can like pay to climb all the way up, which is interesting because you pay to like climb. But anyway, that was really scary because there's like nothing to hold on to all the way up, and you're just like, if I slip right now, I'm going to fall, and like it's not going to be comfortable. I'm not going to come out okay. But it was really cool once you got to the top because you can see all of the little carvings and everything, which is so cool.
Speaking of art, did you go to Montmartre?
Yes, we did.
Because that's a big art
We
place.
just had an afternoon there, but it was still really cool.
We got to see all the aspiring
artists,
artists
yes.
around the
It was
coffee
yes.
so
shops.
busy.
Streets, yeah.
It was very, very cool.
Karen?
Are any of you keeping up with your host families? Are they?
Oh, I was going to say something. The most memorable, there's 2 really memorable things from Paris. Well, maybe 3. The number one, Paris at night. This is the Paris skyline at night. We went all the way to the top of the Eiffel Tower. It was awesome seeing
Right
all
at
the lights.
sunset.
Yeah, it was beautiful. And we saw the flashing lights. Every hour at night, the lights on the Eiffel Tower will flash.
And everyone cheers. It's
Yeah. And then we went on the River Seine cruise. That was another
Oh,
really
that's
cool
nice. That was
thing
That's beautiful.
that we did. And number 3 was the infamous lock bridge.
Yep.
People would buy these locks, open them up, write something on them,
Yeah.
put them on the bridge, and then throw the key into the river.
Normally it's like for your if you get married, you go and do that on your honeymoon. Like we're locking our
Yeah.
lives together. Like we're in love. But
And then
yeah,
you throw the key into the river, and that's
Yeah.
what you
And
do.
There forever.
So as far as keeping up with our host families, I know I've been emailing mine, and they don't have prom there, and so my host sister wanted me to send her prom pictures from that, which was just a month ago, and of like our houses and schools, because I know I talked a lot about the differences in houses and school system when I was there with my host sister, and so she just wanted to see pictures of that. So.
Yep. For me, I'm keeping up with my host sister as well, although it's difficult because time difference as well as
That's
just
right,
also
8 hours.
I have a lot of obligations as far as work and school, so it's hard sometimes to find the time, but I do my best, and as does she, and it's a lot of fun. So I'm hoping next summer I'm able to host her at my house for 2 weeks, so I'm very excited about that.
Did you notice that it was very common that they drank wine with their meals?
My host family didn't as much.
Same
They
as
didn't,
mine.
huh?
My host
Only when
family
we went out one night, but they ordered non-alcoholic for me.
Yeah, for my host family, my host parents may have had wine and stuff, but the kids didn't.
Oh,
The older daughter,
interesting.
Daphne, did. She's 21.
Yes.
So, that was it was kind of interesting. And that, of course, we can't have that because we're not 20.
Yeah.
Right.
My favorite thing about the French dinners, though, were after the main meal, was the cheese.
Oh,
The
yes.
cheese
Oh,
and the
yes.
bread. That was the best part of every meal, was all the cheese. It was so good. That was my favorite part.
Thank you so much for
It's like
sharing.
this taste you can't satisfy back here because
Yeah.
it's just not the same anywhere you
Oh,
go.
I know it isn't.
I told my host family that Wisconsin is basically the France of the United States because we have a lot of cheese. That's what I told them.
The other thing we noticed, as far as different customs, was the smoking, which I'm sure that it's very common. But my host family didn't smoke. I think most of our host families.
Mine didn't.
No, mine
Didn't
didn't
have
either,
siblings
but
who
I
I mean,
saw
I'm
a
sure
lot of
Yeah,
my host
but you
mother
would
did,
see
but
kids just
never-
like rolling cigarettes in school, which was really strange. Cause
Standing
that's-
outside the school
Yeah.
gates before
Smoking.
classes,
Smoking, yeah. There was, like,
smoking
a
as much
spot
as they
where
could before they could go in.
Yeah, and it was just interesting because it was like it was everywhere, and
Yes.
we're just not used to that.
Yeah,
Yes.
and for my host sister, it was I was walking with one of her friends up to go buy lunch one day, and one of her friends had a cigarette out, and I was in my head, I'm like, really? This is really. It's kind of disturbing because she's only in high school. I don't think she's even 18 yet, and she's already into that.
Well, thank you for listening to our
Thank you.
stories.
Thank you.
And we hope we can go again, and we hope that these students will inspire other students to take the plunge and live with people that they don't know.
Yeah.
It's very commendable that they did
Yeah.
that. So.
I was the only one. It wasn't. Who else lived out in the country? I was one who did.
I think
You think
Hannah.
Sarah? I thought it was. I thought it was Sarah.
Yeah,
I
thank
don't
you.
know. Who
Thank
did?
you for listening. It was a lot of fun.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah.